Hello guys, today we're gonna review the Figment. Right from its opening cutscenes, Figment isn't afraid to get stuck in and take it huge important and always centric themes of depressions, looming behind the bright colors and musical melodies seen on the surface. Figment's plot and locations are buried deep within the human mind, telling a story of the difficulty faced when coping with the disease. The game handles the burden of dealing with this topic rather well, especially considering the vast potential of error of misjudgment that comes with it, and it's one that we're glad to have experienced. From here on out, you're tasked with exploring the inner workings of the mind as Dusty, the brain-former voice of courage, solving puzzles to rid demons within. The game is split up into three main chunks, granting you access to both the creative and logical sides of the brain before rising up to the consequences, and each of these areas adds its own aesthetic and level design themes. These themes, at least from a sensory point of view, are fantastic. The creative side is full of music, silliness, and crazy design, while the logical side literally runs like clockwork. The gameplay itself is a slightly more mixed affair, however, regardless of each area in his puzzles somehow being extremely creative, the gameplay itself is a slightly more mixed affair, however, regardless of each area in with the puzzles somehow being extremely creative and annoyingly repetitive at the same time. You see, almost every task revolves around the idea of finding batteries to power certain objects and handles that can be used to manipulate them. As you get used to the game flow, you'll start to find yourself thinking, right, a handle will definitely be needed for that, and you'll almost always be spot on with your assumptions. The way in which you stumble across these theme items can sometimes be incredibly clever, especially as you stumbled into completely new areas, but the familiar nature does impact the enjoyment a little. The difficulty balance does work quite nicely from puzzle to puzzles, so with the game never feeling too easy or not too hard. The characters are rather grating, however, and we innately found ourselves being almost put off by NPC voices. You will find houses scattered around the mind, with a quick knock on the door allowing you to hear their thoughts, but the voice acting for this character is so ridiculously over the top and barmy that we quickly stopped talking to them. The conversation between Dusty and your sidekick Piper is usually better thought, with healthy dose of puns and sarcasm leading you thoughts that will be have others otherwise being a rather mundane adventure. There are few things that let Figment down, such as those were already mentioned, and the lack of an accessible world map to show you where certain locations are when needed. But the game is very well done on this wall. The pacing of the game's first areas, which are full of humor and creativity, while occasionally reminding you of the darker overtones, work really nicely to set up for a slightly murkier final. Perhaps most importantly thought, Figment managed to tackle that always looming topic of depression without pushing away those who might be sensitive to the plot. The characters are open and self-aware in how they speak and act, and the game does a good job of not shoving things in your face unnecessarily. It's not quite a must-have experience, but it certainly takes a very decent steps at its goal. It's not a hard puzzles, but neither it is easy. Pigment generally adheres a nice balance. Some bugs still skitter throughout the mind, and not just that one representing is a middle act. On 5 different occasions, Figment's loading screen looked up while I jumped from one zone to text next. At once a floating platform, I was suddenly became intangible. Sending poor Dusty, Figment is at once light-hearted and deep. It reminds us that dark things may lurk underneath otherwise pleasant surface, that grumpy echoes may populate that shuttered house of one otherwise beautiful mind. Sometimes Figment seems a little too silly for its ambitions, but its frivolity never managed to fully drown out it over researching message. Let it we perceive and have a little faith in our abilities, things will luckily turn out well in the long run, or at least we'll learn how to live with the pain. Thank you for watching, guys. Goodbye.